good morning, and welcome to this week's Monday Motivation. So, this week's Monday Motivation is filmed currently at that really strange time between Christmas and New Year. So, the the in betwixt, is that what people call it? The in betwixt bit? The bit where you're either going to bed really late and getting up really late, or going to bed really early because you have just had a blowout over the Christmas period. Maybe you're getting ready to party up to a new year. Maybe you're getting ready to set some different goals for a new year. You could even be in a reflective mood right now and be looking back at the year that you've had so that you can look forward to the year that you've got. Whichever it is you're doing, welcome. And this week's Monday Motivation is a little bit different. A little bit different in style, but we'll share some different ways in which you can be self-motivated, all based on you and all based on your year. So in order to give you some examples of what that might look like for you, I'm putting myself out there and I'll share some things from my year. So if you've got any questions or got any comments and you don't mind commenting live as usual, just post it in the comments below. And if you're watching this on the replay, thank you so much for catching up and watching this on the replay. Where's my glass of water? I've been sneezing this morning already. So the thing that you do need to know, especially if this is the first time you've ever watched a Monday Motivation, is this. Monday Motivations actually started back in 2008. So coming up for like 12 years old. Can you believe that already? 2008. So they started off as something because a lot of people gave Mondays a bad rap. They said, oh, I don't like Mondays. You know, it was a day that was not quite feared, but definitely not looked forward to. I mean, there's songs about not liking Mondays and all sorts of things as well. And these actually started off with just kind of like a little motivational quote or something that I used to send around to my colleagues when I was working back in financial services here in the UK. And then people would share them with their friends. When I started this business in 2010, I decided to keep the momentum going, and every Monday would just send a motivational quote with a nice picture to the people that were on my mailing list. Until 4 years ago nearly, or 3.5 years ago, not to exaggerate, I decided to bring them to life and bring them live to you in this format, which is the Monday Motivation. So thank you for those of you who watch these and comment, those of you who watch these and share, and those of you who watch these and send me messages about the resonance of how these resonate with you, how they've helped you get through a difficult spot, and really how they've helped you to see things differently. That's really my aim, just to give you a different point of view, another perspective. And the thing that I will say is that I will sometimes share insights, never personal details, if it's a theme that's come up a lot with clients. But you know what? I'm not immune from this. I have the same thought processes as you do. I sometimes have the same struggles as you do, and these sometimes will be created from a place of, well, what did I learn and what did I do differently? And today is no different. So as we go through this process of a year in review, I invite you, grab some pen and paper, get a nice cup of tea or a glass of water, or your favourite drink, and set your timer. Take some time out just to reflect on you, because it's not something that many of us do that often. In a world where social media is definitely more prevalent now than it's ever been, it's very tempting to look through the lens of somebody else's life and maybe compare our lives to what they're doing, where actually you have got enough juice within your own life to compare your own life to your own self. So I have got my notes here, and I could go through every single month of my year, but you know what, that might not be so helpful for you. So let's start off with why you might want to do a year in review, and why this is helpful. So for those of you who are employed and you work for SMEs or small to fairly large companies, you will usually have something called an appraisal, an annual review or something like that. And in that review, you will be expected to go back over your year and talk about what worked well, what didn't work so well, what you'd like to improve on, what you would like to learn going forward. You might be encouraged to set some goals moving forward. You might even be encouraged to look at goals that you've set in the past, what needs to happen to make them happen. And whilst for a lot of people who go through this process, and just to say, I haven't got any comments coming up, so I'm going to assume that you're watching and not commenting, which is fine. And for a lot of people, they sometimes don't like this approach. It could be that the approach is something that's tied very closely into maybe a wage structure, pay rise or salary, or maybe it feels it's self-indulgent to have a look at yourself and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And for some of you, it just feels like this is time where I get criticised or something else like that. So this actual act of doing your own review, whether you're doing this just for you or whether you're doing this so that you can take it into work or to share with other people, sometimes can make you feel really vulnerable, very open. And as part of my work as a visibility specialist, yes, how you stand out and how you show up into the world, how they hear you, is all important, but how you are seen is even more important. And this has got nothing to do with how you're seen necessarily by everybody else, but how you see yourself is really where it stems from. And a lot of the work that I do with my private clients, even those who don't have a business and aren't looking to be more visible or put themselves out there, normally stems from what's going on inside. So we start with kind of like self tools, if you like, self-managing tools, so that you can have a look at what is going on, and you can almost feel like you have some control over how you are being in the world. And for many of my clients, this is beneficial for them. Gets them all sorts of things like better sleep, great peace of mind. They don't worry so much. A lot of people come to me who are really anxious. They get really anxious about certain situations, especially professionally, and it helps them with that as well. And it's really heartwarming when somebody sends me a message, like an email or a text, and says, I've just gone and done this thing. I remember we spoke about this a few months ago at the beginning of our work together, and I've finally done it, because it means that they have taken on those tools and been able to make a change to their life. So one of the things that I strongly encourage you to do when you do any kind of review is to put a frame around it, almost like a picture frame. Put a frame around it that feels really great to you. Is this going to be a goal-orientated exercise? Is this going to be a what would I do differently next time? And you would have heard me use that phrase before. Not what will I do better, or how can I do it in a way that doesn't mean that I feel like I've messed it up, but what would I do differently next time? And the reason for that is that question gives you the permission, whether something went really well or really badly and you never want a repeat of that. It means that you're not setting yourself up for it. It has to be better. It has to be better than that person, or I should do this, or I must do that. You're cutting yourself some slack because you're now giving yourself permission to do the thing in the way that you want to do it. And this is important when you're setting this up for yourself. Okay, so what would I do differently next time is a really important question to ask throughout this. When you go through this, think of the actual scenario. Don't think of the scenario of how it ended. Think of the actual scenario. What was the scenario? What was it? Maybe you might have been tasked to do something. You might have tasked yourself to do something. You might have had an intention or a goal. So then what was that? And then the third step would be, what did you do? Now, quite often when we're in the art of beating ourselves up, I know this, not just from the clients that I've worked with, but from myself as well. When we're really into beating ourselves up about something that didn't happen so well, we tend to focus on what happened first. We don't look at the scenario, what was the intent of what we were going to do. We don't look at what we actually did, and we certainly don't look at our specific actions. And the most painful space to get stuck into when we're reviewing our year is, well, it would have been all right if it hadn't been for Jenny. She did this and she did that, and it made me do this and it made me do that. And the reason why it's best not to look back at your year in that way, or for some of us a decade, because I've also, in my group, the Visibility Vibes Tribe, if you're not part of the group, go on in there and have a look. I actually went back a decade and went back and just gave like a little bite size of the first thing that sprang to mind from those years, and encouraged some of the vibers to do the same. And like a handful of people really got involved and started to share just little snippets of their life in the last decade as well. So heartwarming to read other people's experiences. It's not just all about me. So the thing is, when we look at what we actually did, it helps us to take responsibility for the part that we played in that. So when we take responsibility for the part we played in it, this is where we get the greatest lessons, the greatest learnings, or even the greatest insights. And once we've got those insights, it almost empowers us, I guess. It empowers us to move forward and do the thing that we wanted to do in the way that we wanted to do it, as opposed to feeling like we're being dragged through it. And, oh, well, I guess this happened. So those 4 steps are like, really look at the scenario before any of it got started, so you've kind of got the clean slate view. Look at the thing that you had to do, or the thing that you intended to do or set out to do, and then look at then the third step is look at the actions that you took. Like, what did you actually do? What part did you play? What was your responsibility in it? And when I say responsibility, I really break that word down into your ability to respond, even in the moment. And then the last and most important piece of that is have a look at the results that you got. Have a look at the results that you got. Now, there is a temptation when you're doing this to say, well, this went well because this thing worked, quote unquote. The result isn't about things being perfect. It isn't about things working. It isn't about the thing having massive kind of, oh, look at me, look at what I did. That is one result. But another result could have been it didn't work out. And the reason why it's important to reflect on the things that didn't work out was because your greatest lessons, your greatest insights come from looking at the things that you want to do differently next time because they didn't work. So let me give you an example, and I've got lots of, this is from my own review. So let me give you an example from last year, because January, for many people, even whether they set resolutions or not, whether they believe in resolutions or not, you can't help but be swept up in the fresh new year, the fresh new start. The things are going to be different. Here's what I want different from my life. Here's what I want different from my environment. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your career. Maybe it's healthy eating. A lot of people do dry January, for example, or they test out being a vegan or try the path of being a vegan. So Veganuary, I think some people nickname it. So for many of us, we will automatically see January as a fresh start. So last January, I was no different. In fact, I felt like last January I started the year strong from a professional point of view, from a business point of view. I remember I started with a cluster of private clients that I was working closely with. And one of the things that I do with them, especially when they're based in the UK, if they're based somewhere else, and we do this online, but we spend a good chunk of time almost strategizing what we want next for ourselves, what we want next in our lives, and in a completely confidential space, so they can talk about anything, whether it's private life or professional life. And we look at exactly kind of what their goals are, what they want to achieve in the time and space working together. So that last January, I started strong. I think in the first week of January, I already had 2 of these. In the first 2 weeks of January, I already had 2 of these set up. So the first week, we met in a nice conference room in a hotel, my kind of nice
nice setting and in a fun space. So we met and we looked at what they'd enjoyed in the past, almost like a mini review, what they were looking to achieve moving forward, etc., etc. And the reason we do that is it almost clears the decks, clears the cobwebs, which is another great reason to do some sort of year in review for yourself as well. So I started strong, had these in the first couple of weeks. And something else that it's important to know, and this is why, in terms of the scenario and the task, the reason why it's so great to do this, with imagine this new year energy, this new start, that everything is possible mentality. By the 17th of January, a high percentage of people who have made New Year's resolutions or promises for what they want to themselves actually fall off the wagon. 17th of January. That's just under 3 weeks into a new year, into a new month. And the biggest reason that this happens is that sometimes in some way people don't feel supported. Sometimes in some way they're not being held accountable for their actions. So if they don't do it, it kind of doesn't matter because no one really knows. And sometimes, despite them maybe putting something out on something like Facebook or declaring to their friends and family that they're going to be doing this thing, they fall off the wagon and they have no tools or backup plans or skills as to how to gently get them back on again. Okay, so by the 17th of January, many people would have fallen off that wagon. So for me, last year, I put some plans in place, and what I did to stop myself from falling off my own wagon was to then break it down, because quite often we've got a goal. It might seem like a big goal. We'll quantify it as big or small, but actually what's happening is we have some a goal, and we need to be able to break it down into manageable chunks, a bit like if you were to eat a whole cake. If you were to eat a whole cake, the best manageable chunks you can do could be slice by slice, could be fork by fork. Imagine eating a big cake all to yourself with just a fork. That makes it more manageable because you're breaking it down into manageable chunks, quite literally. So when we break things down into manageable chunks, it means that we have the ability then to go through and do something that we might perceive as big. So this is what I did last year. I set some goals out, I set them out and broke them down in manageable chunks. And then I saw a bit further into the year, I think it got to about July or August, and I said, you know what? I'm thinking that I could put this particular thing in here, but I'm just going to leave it as a space. Now, having a goal without a destination, a specific destination to your goal, is a bit like jumping in a car and saying, I'm going to go to New York, and then not specifying which part of New York, or a bit like saying I'm going to drive to Manchester in the UK, but not having a specific area, which part specifically. So when we do that, we can sometimes derail ourselves. But here's what happens. So this seemingly, it's in the distance and I could do this or I could do that, I'm just going to let that go a bit of in flow, meant that something else that I actually had planned in January didn't really have a proper destination. And because it didn't have a proper destination, it's like as we travelled the journey through the year, the wheels of that fell off. It didn't happen. So the reason that I share that with you, so the scenario was that I was planning my year, my January was strong, brilliant. All I had to do was break my tasks down in manageable bite-sized chunks, which I did with some gaps in. So the actions that I was able to take was I was able to follow this roadmap almost like fork number 1, fork number 2, slice number 3, slice number 4. But of course, slice number 7 and 8 were missing. So by the time I got round to that part of the year, guess what? That's when it almost felt, I don't really do overwhelm that much as an emotion, although I have been overwhelmed. But when I got to that point, I was a bit like, what shall I do next? What shall I do for the best? Grabbing on to things, not really sure. And it meant that quite a great project, which would have had some firm foundations, then didn't get off the ground, which might be okay if you're doing that for someone else, but when you're doing it for yourself, then you put yourself back. So in doing this exercise, I looked back at the lessons, like what were the red flags, what did I learn, what would I do differently next time? And also the insights that I picked up from that particular scenario are noteworthy. It almost gives me my checklist for moving forward. And this is what will actually motivate you. This is what will motivate you moving forward. Because when you're moving forward in something that's seemingly different, you've now got a checklist for something that you've got a personal point of reference for, that you can look back into the past and to be able to have a look at that. So I'd love to know whether you're watching this live now, and thank you for those of you who've been hopping on, even if you've been hopped on and hopped off. Thank you for watching this. What I'd really like to know is, are you going to give this a go? If you are, give me a thumbs up or even a love heart. I'd love to know. And if you want to share it somewhere that's a little bit less public than a public Facebook page where everybody can see your comments, then by all means delve into the Visibility Vibes Tribe Facebook group. Now in there, the only people that will see the comments and things that you post and the answers to your questions, if you've got questions, you ask them in there. If you've got things to share to help others, ask them in, post them in there. But the only people that will see them are other people in the group. And maybe I'm biased about this, but I have to say the Visibility Vibes Tribe is one of the softest places to land on Facebook. So if you're part of the Visibility Vibes Tribe already, I want to say thank you so much for being part of that. Thank you so much for watching. I'm wishing you a really, really happy new year. Something else that I need to say just before I hop off is that future episodes of Monday Motivation are going to happen at the slightly later time, half an hour later. So for those of you that watch from overseas, they're going to be even later into your day. For my Australians and people that are over in that part of the world, they're now going to be, I think, 6 o'clock in the evening on your Monday evening, depending on where you are, between 6:30 and 7:30. For those of you who watch in the United States, thank you so much for watching. There's so many of you. I was really quite gobsmacked. They will happen a bit later on into your evening, into your Sunday evening. But, wherever you're watching from in the world, whatever time zone, I want to just say a huge thank you for the part that you've played in my 2019. And I'm looking forward to going further forward with you in 2020, the year of 2020 vision, the year where you get to see your life for what it is. And sometimes that will look rosy. Sometimes you might think, I don't want to look at it. But either way, let's do this together. So look forward to seeing you at the newer time of 7:30 a.m. on a Monday morning. Thank you so much for sharing these videos. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your loves. Thank you for your likes. Have a brilliant Monday, whatever you do. And if you're still on the in between Christmas and New Year, chill out, relax, share this with your friends, have a discussion. What do they think about reviewing the year? Do they think it's great? Do they think it's a waste of time? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Lots of love to you, and bye for now.